Good afternoon, everyone, and good morning to those on the West Coast. Thank you for joining us for our webinar today, Better Together, Building a Partnership Between Planned Gift and Major Gift Officers. My name is Jeremy Stelter, Executive Vice President at the Stelter Company. I'm happy to be here today to introduce our presenter, Jay Steenhuysen. But before I do, I'd like to say a few words about our webinar series. As an industry leader in planned giving marketing, Stelter is committed to providing innovative solutions and education for our industry. We're happy to host this complimentary webinar today, as well as a whole slate of webinars throughout the year. Today's webinar is the 7th of our 2019 curriculum. Our final webinar slated for this year is Michael Degenhart on November 13th. Degenhart will provide tips for integrating planned giving into campaigns. You can register for this webinar by visiting our website at www.stelter.com/webinars, and we'll be sending an invite straight to your inbox as the webinar draws closer. Back to our presentation today with Jay Steenhuysen. Jay is the founder of Steenhuysen Associates and Gift Strategies. He is widely recognized as a dynamic and inspiring consultant, coach, trainer, and major gift planning expert. He has more than 30 years of experience advising national and international nonprofit and charitable organizations, including the Nature Conservancy, World Wildlife Fund, Conservation International, ACLU, AARP, and Consumer Reports. For over 18 years, Steenhuysen and Associates has trained development teams in collaboration between major gift and gift planning officers. He has created training curriculums that equip fundraisers to connect with high net worth donors, discover their agendas, and offer donor-focused philanthropic solutions. Steenhuysen Associates also provides high quality, high capacity donor qualification and cultivation services through telephone conversations conducted by skilled donor relationship managers. Prior to establishing his own firm, Jay served as Managing Director of Philanthropy Services at MyCFO, a financial services firm whose 300 plus clients had an average net worth of $125 million. He also worked at Brown University developing its philanthropic planning program within the Principal Gifts Department and served as the Director of Gift Planning at World Vision. Jay's commitment to the fundraising profession includes leadership positions and service with the Partnership for Philanthropic Planning, now known as National Association of Charitable Gift Planners, where he served as board chair in 2014. He co-chaired the committee responsible for developing the organization's Leadership Institute, a forum designed to strengthen the gift planning community nationwide. Jay holds a BA from Seattle Pacific University, an MA in Theological Studies from Gordon Conwell Theological Seminary, and an MBA from Pepperdine University. We are very fortunate and honored to have Jay with us today. He really is an industry leader and a phenomenal presenter, and we're excited to have him today. Thank you, Jay.
Thank you, Jeremy. And thank you, everyone, for taking time out today and this September, beginning of September, as we move into the fundraising season. I'm happy to be with you today and to share some thoughts on building a partnership between the Planned Giving Office and the Major Gift Officers. As Jeremy mentioned, my career in Planned Giving is over 30 years old. It's where I cut my teeth. It's what I love to talk about. So thank you for, again, for joining. When I first got into gift planning all those years ago, I soon realized that my best prospects were inside the major gift portfolio. So in my job, I needed to figure out how to get access to those donors so I could take all these new tools and skills I'd learned and apply them in situations that were good for the donor and good for the organization. And that's where I spent my time, was figuring out how do I help a major gift officer succeed so that I can bring my skill set to the table and also create value for the donor and the organization. So I learned that what I can do is take the unique knowledge that a gift planner has about business, about finance, about economic, about numbers, taxes, all those wonderful things that we spend our time focused on, and apply them to the donor relationship that a major gift officer has. And the best way to do that is to focus on the value that we can create, is to focus on how we can help high net worth donors and make their best gift from assets as opposed to cash. So I'm sure everybody has seen this slide from Russell James that talks about the impact of non-cash gifts on the growth of charitable organizations. And what this is highlighted, though it was released, I think, April a year ago now, is that organizations are going to grow best when they not only get cash gifts, they're going to grow best when they're getting gifts of assets, particularly gifts of securities. And one of the things that this highlights is it's possible for organizations to grow their income from the same donors that by changing how the donor makes the gift. And one of the things that we've discovered over time working with our clients is that if we can get donors to consider other ways of giving, non-cash ways of giving, those donors are going to give more. And that, of course, the cost of acquiring a major donor and the process to nurture a major donor, all the better when you can turn an existing donor into a larger donor. And that's where we want to focus. We need to move away from asking for cash. I noticed in a Financial Times article about 2 weeks ago that they were looking at the growth of cash holdings among high net worth donors, people who have $1 million or more in investable assets, is what this came from Capgemini. And what it essentially said is donors have raised their holdings of their allocation of their wealth into cash, and that percentage is 27.9% now, which is a huge number. If you think about the donors who are in securities and bonds and all the other things they can be into, that's a huge number of cash. The thing is, as a fundraiser, I can't get excited about that cash because clearly they're sort of keeping their powder dry and waiting for other investments to come. And what we don't see is donors spending that cash on, all the different things one can do. They're stocking it away. And so even though our donors have a larger percentage of cash in their portfolio, we're not going to really get access to that. So we need to work on making the case for gifts of assets to the organization. And that's really how we're going to grow the income to our organizations. And it's going to come by gift planners working with major gift officers to figure out the best way to introduce this to donors. So there's a lot of conventional thinking out there about plan giving officers and major gift officers. It has changed. I think we've seen a lot of positive change over the last years where gift planners, there's a lot more collaboration going on, a lot under the umbrella of the blended gift and working together for those things. But the focus really has been on how can plan gift officers, get the kind of leads and the partnership from major gift officers so I can close more plan gifts. Today I want to focus more on how, as a plan giving person, I can help the major gift officer be a success and move beyond conventional thinking to finding ways to serve our donors. So here's just a list out that I've seen out there about the difference between plan giving officers and major gift officers and what they focus on. Plan giving, all that fun stuff that we get into as far as various assets, taxes, how and planning. Major gift officers are about the relationship, who they know. We focus essentially on deferred gifts. Major gift officer needs that outright immediate gift. We want loyal donors, major gift, high capacity donors. Modest gift history can still lead to a very big plan gift, as we all know, but major gift officers are looking for that notable gift history because they want that significant gift now. Wealth indicators, really not key for plan giving, very important for major gift officers. Longevity as a donor, again, very important for plan giving, not so much. I can get a really big first gift from a donor as a major gift officer. More likely senior, older in age. Age is not critical at all, for the major gift officer. It's the money in the bank or the money in the assets. Modest cultivation over time, strategic cultivation, closing that gift. And then conventional thinking for plan giving, we're okay with technicalities. Major gift officers want to avoid them. We know, gift planners know what we need to ask our donor in order to really work on discovery to suggest alternative ways of giving. But it's the major gift officer that has the relationship and is in the room. So we're going to have to find ways to collaborate to get the kind of access we want to close the kind of non-cash gifts that would be really beneficial for our organizations. Sorry, I'm having there we go. So we need to have a different conversation with our donors, and we need to help the major gift officers have that different conversation, which means that we need to help the donor understand the various ways they can give. Our donors don't realize that they could give a lot more than they are right now if they just were more thoughtful about how and what they gave. And that's the different kind of conversation. It's sitting down with the donor and explaining, you have all these charitable priorities, not just us, but all of them in your life, and there's better ways to make that gift. And enabling the major gift officer to introduce that idea so plan giving can come in behind it is exactly the kind of conversation we're looking for. Now, what kind of value does that create? Well, let me give you an example. We did a training 2 years ago, May, and one of the folks, they had a meeting with a donor actually in between the 2 days of training, and had gone to that donor, and that donor had given on an annual basis $300,000 like clockwork every year. And unfortunately, in this visit, the fundraiser sat down, was expecting to be able to happily take this check and go back. And the donor said, I'm sorry, this year I can't do it. I'm just not in a position to be able to write a check that size, and it's not going to work. But here's 30,000, and that's what I'm willing and able to do. And the fundraiser, having gone through how to talk to donors about other ways of giving, just started a short conversation about, would you consider making this gift with stock instead of cash? And he said, I'll think about it. The very next day, she got a phone call. And that phone call, the donor said, you have your full $300,000. Now, that was possible because he wasn't dipping into his cash flow to make that gift. And whatever those other pressures are, we didn't even need to know. But what we needed to do was introduce the idea that there's another way of giving that will allow you to make that gift without impacting any of those other issues going on in your life. So we want to equip the fundraiser, the major gift officer, to go in the room and have a different conversation. And if we do have that conversation, we're going to differentiate our organization. If we've got all these other organizations asking for donors to make these gifts out of cash, we've actually entered into this limited environment where it's going to be a few are going to get the bigger gift and others are going to lose out. Well, instead of competing for that limited cash asset, which, by the way, your competition is not just other charities, but it's anything that donor can spend their cash on. So if that's what you're competing against, and you go down and say, look, we don't want your cash. We're interested in helping you figure out ways you can fulfill your gift commitment with assets. Now I'm not in competition anymore. My donor cannot fund a second vacation home with gifts of securities. They have to be turned into cash. My donor cannot use their investments to rent a plane. They can't do those things with assets. They have to do that with cash. Well, one of the things they can do with their assets is give to charity. So let's move away from the competition with all the things that cash can do and focus on those gifts of assets. And the next thing, and I think, frankly, the most important thing about major gift officers having conversations, structured conversations with donors about about gifts of assets, is that you incredibly increase your discovery about the donor. I have just seen it over and over again that in the course of these conversations, donors will start to reveal critical things about their philanthropy, how they make their philanthropy choices, what they make it with, the timing of those things. And it's all because we began with a conversation about other ways to give. There's also a deepening of relationship. The organization moves from one of several beloved nonprofits to that unique organization that not only tells me, why it's good to give to them, but tells me how it's good to give to them. And that changes the perception of the donor to the organization. And lastly, as I say, you're going to secure larger gifts from the donor. So plan giving, major gift officers need each other. And the first reason is the financial world's become so complex that there's not going to be any Lone Ranger gifts anymore. When I first got into fundraising, there were lots and lots of people who were going out there trying to haul in the big $1 million gift all by themselves. Well, that's just not possible anymore. Now we need the different skill sets to come together, understanding the financial circumstances of our donor, and help them think about, how they can, make those better gifts. And again, working in a collaboration that makes it possible. Now, when I first started training on this collaboration, the first time I did it was in March of 2003. And there was one individual in the room who was the director of philanthropy for this organization's chapter in California. And his body language through the 2 days of training was just, no, I'm not, there's no way I'm going to do this or ask any of these questions from my donors. And yet still, the next day he flew off back to California and had a meeting with a donor where he was picking up a check for $150,000. And one of the things that we taught in the training is that when a major gift officer is picking up a check, they need to ask the following question. What makes it possible for you to give, and in this case, that donor, for you to give $150,000 in cash to us, and then stop talking? And as they wait for the donor to start to share that answer, they're going to begin to reveal stuff about their financial circumstances that changes the engagement with the donor and the opportunity. In this particular case, that donor who gave $150,000 in a check ended up within 6 months of giving $7 million to the charitable organization, $3.5 million in outright gifts and $3.5 million in a deferred gift. Well, by asking that question, we found that there was a large financial event going on in the donor's life. There were things that were happening in his financial circumstances that allowed him to cut loose a lot of resources at the time. And so he was able to make these really dramatic gifts to the organization, which is quite an upgrade from $150,000. But it was possible because the major gift officer, under duress in this case, asked the question and found out from the donor what's necessary to then start engaging on a different level with them. So we need each other, major gift officers, plan gift officers, because we are not going to get those kind of gifts unless we're working together. In that case, they discovered that there were these events, brought in the gift planning team, and over $7 million deferred and current within 6 months. So, plan giving officers, we have the expertise about money and wealth. I mean, face it, we're tethered to CNBC, watching either that or Bloomberg and all the things that are going on in the financial world each and every day, and how that impacts the mood of our donors and their thinking about making a gift. One of the things we can do that the typical or atypical major gift officer is not in a position to have focused and studied to understand the complex financial circumstances of our donor. And that's critical that we do that because that gives us the ability to understand what's going on in their life. And we can help major gift officers raise larger immediate gifts from the same donors. I want to reiterate that. Major gift officers, they control the relationships with the most affluent prospects. Like I said, I needed to find a way to get into their portfolio because that's where I was going to find my best prospects to apply my trade. So major gift officers reach many more donors for discovery. It is typical for there to be quite a number, I think, of organizations that we work with. It's a ratio of about 10 to 1. For every 10 fundraisers out the door, there's one gift planner. And that gift planner is able to, they're a resource, but they're never going to reach all the people that the major gift officers reach. And if we can build a collaboration, we can empower major gift officers to do the kind of discovery that will help us find those key donors who are having events happen in their lives that allow us to talk about really significant gifts that they can make. So we need to find a way to support our major gift officers because they're going to be in the room first asking these questions. So we're going to work better if we can find that synergy between our skill set and the major gift officer's skill set. And it's those skill sets that overlap that really create the opportunity for us. So as we know, successful solicitations build on a donor's interest and capacity. Major gift officers what we can really help with is assessing capacity and ability. We can really dive deep and find out by asking the right questions, find out a lot more about our donors' financial circumstances. And together we can build a complete picture of the donor's interest and capacity. And then collaboration means bigger gifts. It just every time. So if we're going to do this, we're going to have to change our behavior a bit, or at least add a few things to how we're going to work with our major gift officers. There's new rules that we need, and we need to think about how we can apply those rules. So first, here we go. Rule 1, donors always want to give more. I start with that premise that our donors have passion about the organizations they're supporting and the outcomes they're getting from that support. And if they could find a way to give more, they would. And so let's start with a posture of, let me help you find other ways that you can make this gift. Now, as a gift planner, I need to be dedicated to secure immediate outright gifts first. Now, I know I have a planned giving goal. I know I have a goal to find so many bequests over the course of a year, and there's gift annuities that have to get done as well. But if I can also help support the major gift officers to secure those immediate large gifts, your leadership's going to know how that happened. It will not go unnoticed. And it certainly is good for the organization to have more resources immediately available. Every deferred gift should be larger. Now, there are lots of ways, when someone's doing a CRT, there are a number of ways to get immediate gifts during that process. We shouldn't just do the CRT and wrap it up and say, someday later. There are things they can do now. Taking a share of the corpus as you're creating the CRT. Maybe 95% goes into the trust, 5% becomes an immediate gift. Becoming part of the income stream. Giving up the donor giving up some of their income interest later. All these different ways that we can generate immediate income even while we're practicing creating our deferred gifts. This is an assumption that I believe to be true. Donors cannot reach their philanthropic potential without a gift planner. It's just not going to happen without somebody who's going to talk to them about the different ways that they can give. And finally, gift officers need gift planners to qualify, cultivate, and close the largest and best gifts. Now, I don't mean that gift planners take over the relationship role with the donor. That is not at all what I'm saying. What I'm saying is, it's the unique insights that the gift planner brings to the relationship that allows to create a cultivation strategy and a solicitation strategy that really empowers the donor to make a bigger, better gift than they would be able to make if they just continued to do cash giving. And it's the gift planner that's going to help them do that. So, if those are our rules for behavior, what do we as gift planners need to do? Well, there's a number of things. First of all, we have to build trust. We have to make sure that the major gift officers are confident that if we come into the room, we're not going to mess it up. And it takes time to earn that trust. I specifically remember one of the gift officers at World Vision way back when I went out to visit a donor with him. And just as we were pulling up, he said to me, now don't do any of that, deferred gift stuff. I don't want to hear that here. And it took some education over a course of months for that particular fundraiser to realize I can be a complement to what he does, not a detriment. The other is our fundraisers, if they're not aware of our donors' financial context, they hear things and it goes right by them, and they don't realize the opportunity they missed. That a donor may have shared about their financial circumstances that suggests, hey, we need to get a gift planner in there right away. There's going to be potential sale of a business, or the donor's, thinking about doing some real estate or getting rid of some real estate that they have. All these different opportunities that if the major gift officer isn't sensitive to those, we're going to miss some really large gifts that are really the donors revealing, here's an opportunity. Next, we have to interpret language. We, again, as plan giving officers, we spend a lot of time understanding, the financial world of our donor, and therefore we're able to, when we hear something, we know we've heard, something that gives us a clue that there's potential here. Now, in a different way, but I think a good story that highlights the potential of making sure that every little thing a donor says is looked at, is we had an individual, this is back in the early 90s, who wanted to make a big gift to World Vision, had made one at least to get on the radar of a major gift officer. And he spent the day with that donor, and his office was in a warehouse. And by that, I don't mean there were nice offices attached to the warehouse. There were wood walls and a desk inside the warehouse itself where he worked. He took the fundraiser out for lunch at his home and drove in his 20-year-old Bronco and showed up at this fine tri-level home, and it was all wonderful. And at the very end of the meeting, the fundraiser convinced himself, nope, I'm going to write this guy off and take him out of my prospect pool. And at the very end, fundraiser said, yeah, I'm headed back out. I'm flying out today. And the donor said, oh, me too. Really? He said, maybe I can get a ride with you to the airport. And he went, well, I'm not going. And at this time, that's so far long ago, it's Stapleton. He said, no, I'm not flying out of Stapleton. I'm flying out of Evergreen. Well, thank goodness our fundraiser went Evergreen. That's a private plane airport. Let's discover a little more. And ask the question, oh, you're flying out of there. How are you doing that? He said, well, I have a plane. I actually have a jet. Well, technically 2 jets. And found out that this individual ran a very large retail furniture organization in the United States and Canada. He had those planes because he's made a commitment that he was going to visit all his stores within a certain number of months a year. And he had that because one time his plane broke down and he had to wait and missed his goal. But the upshot is that he gave over $35 million from somebody who didn't look like our kind of prospect. But we need to enable our major gift officers to recognize these opportunities, hear these things, and bring them back to us. Next, we need to do a little training. How we can put the major gift officer in the room armed with some questions that will start to elicit information. So that we need to do that. And you may not be able to have a big formal training inside your organization. You may actually have like a one-on-one relationship with somebody where you start to build out this idea. We want to get to the place where we're going to collaborate and strategize for donor meetings. We need to be in the room so we're featuring why the donor can give. Somebody needs to also be in the room to explore how the donor can give as part of that solicitation. And then, of course, we always want to be asking for the current gift. How can you make this gift today? And then for us, we need to be turning plan gifts into blended gifts so we can support our major gift officers by them getting outright gifts as we work with our donor prospects. Now, you may ask yourself the question, what, as a gift planner, there's a lot of extra work here in terms of training, working with my colleagues. What are the benefits to me if I start to work and create this collaboration? Well, you get to be in strategy discussions. I mean, you just move to a different level in the organization. Or people are going to look for, hey, we need to get together and talk about so-and-so donor and what we can do. And eventually, hopefully, you'll get out there and you'll get to meet that donor and start to build a relationship, helping them with their giving. We're going to raise more current gifts that we talked about, that focus, and larger deferred gifts. And I think the job becomes a lot more interesting when I'm working instead of over in some silo of gift planning, but I'm actively working with my major gift, principal gift colleagues and helping them think through the best gift options and opportunities with their significant donors. So if we're going to have a new way that we're going to do business, the major gift officers need to think about how they're going to be involved in this as well. Now, rule number one, donors always want to give more. Now, that, again, that's an assumption I take to every donor relationship. I really believe that if we could show donors how they could give more and it wouldn't cost them more, and I'm not talking about a deferred gift necessarily, but a better way to do their immediate giving, we're going to see that they're going to give more. It just has happened over and over again. For example, I'll share it here. There was one, we had been training with an organization actually for a number of years, helping their philanthropy team know how to talk to donors about making gifts of non-cash assets. And it would be, well, almost 2 years ago this September, that this fundraiser philanthropy officer was in their office, and their board chair came, bounding into the office all excited and said, "You aren't going to believe this. I just was able to make a gift to you guys out of mutual funds. And it just was so much better for me that I do it that way." And this donor had been a consistent, he was the chair of the local board. He consistently gave $50,000 in cash every year for over 5 years. And yet here he is coming in all excited about this gift he can finally do with his mutual fund shares. They were appreciated. My tax guy explained all this to me. We've got to take this to the board and explain it to the board so they can get on and they can do it this way as well. I mean, we really have to tell this story. And, it took everything the philanthropy officer had to go, to keep inside. We've been telling it for years, but so glad that this donor had decided to make that gift and wanted to share that story and was excited about giving. That's a good story. You know what made it a great story is instead of $50,000, the donor gave $248,000 to the organization that year. Donors will give more when they understand how to do it in a way that is more tax efficient for them and is the better way to give. So we need to help major gift officers to stop asking for cash. There needs to be a pause and would you like to make this gift? Now let's talk how. Every solicitation should be larger based on the fact that the gifts are being made out of assets, not cash. And this is a hard one, but I believe it to be true. If you don't know your donor's financial context, you don't know your donor. We have to understand how the resources are generated that make their gifts possible. So we need to be at the ready, asking questions, and trying to discover more about the donor circumstances. Because rule number 5 is absolutely true. Donors cannot reach their philanthropic potential with cash. I can't say never. One time I saw a donor do more with cash than with stock or securities or anything else. It's the one, and the only reason that happened is this particular individual got a Wells notice. And for those of you who are unfamiliar, a Wells notice is when the SEC tells you you are a target of an investigation. And when that happened, he said, "I'm not doing anything with my securities. I'm going to make a gift of $10 million in cash and call it good." But other than that, every growth in gift that I've seen in working with donors occurs because they move from making their gifts with cash to something else. So if major gift officers are going to do that, what things do they need to learn to do differently? First, they need to start developing, trust and taking risks and trust that they're going to get the good answers. We need to start asking our donors the questions. So we have to stretch the comfort zone to raise bigger, better gifts, which means that we have to sacrifice certainty for more. There's just such a desire to control the relationship because I don't want to make a mistake and lose this donor that I'm not going to risk. And if we're going to find these larger gifts from appreciated assets, we're going to have to take risks by asking the donors questions. But the good news is they can be incremental. We don't come with a sheet of 20 questions and ask it all in one meeting. It's over a period of time. We learn to discover more about our donors' circumstances and helping us create a better cultivation solicitation strategy with our major gift partners. So we need to listen. There's a lot more listening. We need to ask questions. For the most part, major gift officers, they talk a lot. They come in, they share the mission, why it's important, how your gift makes a difference, and they can just really get wound up about trying to make the case. But we need to come in, ask these questions, and stop talking. Less talking is going to lead to more information. So we're going to need to equip them to ask questions they've never asked for before. And finally, you need to drink your water. That's something we talk about in our training. Nobody can speak while they're swallowing water. You need to drink your water to just help you stop talking so you can listen to what the donor has to say. And so, but if they're going to go in and have that conversation, we need to arm them with questions. Now, what other actions does the major gift officer need to do? Well, they need to remember and record what happened in the meeting. It's important to write down even the things you don't understand. You need to write them down. There's no detail too small that might help us give us significant insight into the financial circumstances of our donor. And a major gift officer may not realize what they've heard, but that could be very important. So whenever they go in with these questions, they need to take copious notes as to what the donor said and what the words they used were. Because the plan giving officer can help interpret that and turn it into something useful to when they review the meeting. The major gift officer and the plan gift officer review the meeting. They may find the nuance of things that are happening to make it possible to create a win-win solicitation. Win for the donor in terms of making a better gift, and win for the organization because it can be larger. So what are the benefits of the major gift officer? Well, build better relationship with donors. If we're approaching donors with a variety of, there's the different elements in a relationship, not just transactional of make a gift and we'll do these good things, but we start to build into broader understanding and engagement with the donor. That's great for major gift officers. It nurtures longer relationships. Donors are going to, we've got people who are donors, and I mean that very positively, but they're leading busy lives. They can make gifts now, but they're not really able to think about their overall philanthropic impact because of their circumstances. But those donors give us great gifts, usually out of earnings. We need to go through this education process we're discussing today to help make them better donors, more strategic in how they make their gifts. But really, that longer relationship comes when our donors become philanthropists. And by that, I mean they've taken steps in their life where philanthropy is going to become a more significant role for them. And because it is, they're going to start doing their philanthropy out of their wealth, not just out of their income, which significantly increases the amount of money they're giving away. So we want to nurture that relationship. Of course, we want to raise larger gifts, again, made with non-cash assets. And then lastly, for those major gift officers, this increases your career options. The reason I know this is when I was on the board of then PPP, now NACPG, we had several outreaches to try to find who our potential members might be. And one of the groups that we looked at is whether recruiters they might find interest in being engaged with that nonprofit organization or PPP. But what I found interesting as I was interviewing them is they were excited about plan giving, thought it was important because they consistently saw as they were given the assignment of finding new fundraisers, that if people were going to really move up in their career and move from major gifts into a principal gifts role, the thing they needed on their resume, their experience, was being able to demonstrate their competency in understanding plan giving concept while they're working with donors. And so all of that to say that if you're a major gifts officer and you want to move up in this field, one of the best things you can do is collaborate with your plan giving officer and learn about that and have stories to tell about how you were able to use it to close significant gifts. So we're looking for a new partner. And one of the best ways to introduce you and bring you into the relationship with the major gift officers is to bring you in as a gift expert. That I would like to introduce you, and before we're done today, we're going to look at 4 different ways for you to say, for your major gift officer to say that to your donors. But it's important that we can be used as these experts that can come in, talk, and leave, and preserve that close relationship between the major gift officer and the donor while we provide strategic services. So if we look at the role that we can play in a moves management context, we have the discover phase, and the major gift officer is going to ask the questions, and the plan giving officer is going to decipher the answers. In cultivation, the major gift officer is going to learn more about the donor's past and present giving, what they care about, their passions, and we're going to want to learn more, arming them with questions about their wealth and assets. To connect with the donor and grow closer in that relationship, major gift officers are going to tie them to programs, to their values, and we're going to tie assets to potential gifts. We're going to start looking at what is the best way that these donors can make these gifts. And as they're solicited, major gift officers are going to ask for the gift to do, what, while we're going to help them suggest also the how. We want to acknowledge the donor once they've made that gift and thank the donor 7 times. And just as an aside, there's a book out there called Happy Money that really delves into how thanking and reliving the gift experience really helps bond a donor closer to the organization, closer to the fundraiser. So I'd recommend that book to you. So we acknowledge, and of course our role as gift planner is to make sure that the asset is brought in appropriately and in the right way to the organization. It's passed all our smell tests and policies, so it's a good gift. Finally, we fulfill by demonstrating that we did with their money as we said, and that's what the major gift officer will do. And we want to make sure that the donor got the best economic value from the gift. Finally, as you service the donor and continue to build the relationship, major gift officers are going to have it go deep. But as a plan giving person, I want it to go broad. I want to learn more and more things about the donor and, again, their financial circumstances so I can better advise on how they're going to make a gift. So that's major gift officers and plan giving officers collaborating. Let's just spend a minute on what the benefit is for the donor if we come in and do this. I mean, it's all good for us, but what does our donor get from this level of engagement in how they make their gift? Well, first of all, we maximize tax benefits. Yeah, they get a charitable income tax deduction, and yes, these kinds of donors are the people who still itemize. But more importantly, there's tax avoidance when they give an appreciated asset and they gift it outright. Then, there's not going to be any capital gains paid by the charity, so they have the avoidance of that second tax tier. There's increased liquidity. More and more, as I shared earlier, that increase in holdings of cash, that's a precious asset. And the more we can help our donors hang on to their cash, the better it's going to be for them. They're going to experience greater satisfaction from giving more. When they see the impact of their gifts and the fact that they were able to stretch and make that gift possible, that's going to be great for them. And lastly, they'll have this better relationship with the organization because we have more than just one inroad to conversation with them, but several ways that we talk to them, not only about how they can help the organization and see their values put at work in the world, but how we can help them do it in a much more efficient manner. So when should major gift officers and planned gift officers work together? Well, a handoff is not collaboration. I took my fair share of they're old. It's probably your turn to deal with them. Yeah, that was gift planning. That was my job. We did inherit those donors. We wanted those donors. They were great. But that isn't collaboration. Collaboration is working together for non-cash gifts. So pretty much anything other than cash, the planned giving officer has a place where they may be a role where they potentially may be helpful in securing those kinds of gifts. Stretch gifts. When we want a donor, think of all the campaigns that are going on right now and the more to come. And in the process of those campaigns, we're trying to help donors figure out how to stretch and give more. Well, the best way that they're going to stretch is by changing how they make their gift. Blended gifts, that donors are setting up both gifts that pay them income for life, but at the same time, they want to see some of their funds put to work today so they can see those outcomes. And lastly, and I emphasized it before, and I can't not again, better discovery. Asking these kinds of questions, talking to donors about how they do their philanthropy, and if they've ever considered something other than cash in that process, to unpack that can dramatically change the relationship. Again, another organization that I work for, we did the training for them. And one of their executives was asked to go out and speak to a significant donor that they had known for 20 years and asks 3 questions related to their philanthropy and how it's planned. And this person was properly staffed, trained on how to do it, understood the potential objections that could come up, but how to come in and really ask these 3 questions and get answers. And he did it and asked those questions, and the donor conversation stopped. Donor did not continue talking for a number of minutes, and then talking about something completely different at this meal that he was at. And he said it took about 20 minutes, and all during that time he was contemplating, who made me do this and how can I make them pay for it? And ultimately he let the conversation go. In about 20 minutes, as I say, the donor looked and said, those are good questions. Here's how we do this as a family. And we happen to have a private foundation that we use as well, and started to unpack all these different ways the family practiced their philanthropy. And he said he'd known that donor for 20 years and didn't know any of those things about the donor. And so I urge, as plan giving people, that we go to our leadership and say, look, this is how we can really help with discovery in terms of conversation with our donors, because I think we can make a tremendous impact. Because as everybody on the phone knows, business and personal events in a donor's life can trigger collaborative opportunities. So if we're out there asking and listening, that's where we can find these great opportunities to really increase the kind of giving a donor can do. What's the benefit of went the wrong way, sorry. Still going. All right, here we go. Getting started. If you're saying, oh, this is fine, how do I bring this back to my office, and I'd like to do this, it's possible. There doesn't have to be a formal program where everybody buys in. You're able to get started by just finding one person who'd be interested in doing it in the major gift side. Somebody who's willing to learn, likely somebody new to the team. They're trying to learn how to be a fundraiser, how to practice this, and would be grateful for the extra input in learning how to do these things. Your more experienced people, albeit with a much better portfolios, have found a way to succeed currently in how they practice their fundraising. We're looking for that person who wants to take it to the next step. And so we find those people, and then we help them. We spend time helping them understand the language of finance so they can listen. It's not so that they have conversations, but that they can listen, because it's that casual comment that sometimes reveals significant opportunity. So you want to then, of that portion of the next donor visit, you can work with your partner and say, look, here's the next few questions that you might want to ask, and you can script them and suggest them that they take it into the next meeting. And then finally, of course, the goal is to make that joint call, that the that the gift officer would suggest that you meet with the donor and gets the donor to then have that meeting with you to learn more about ways that they can give. Because really, to do this well, we need to find a way, as a gift planner, we need to get into the room. So here are some ways you can take back and help people introduce you. There are a number of tax-effective ways to make your gift, including giving appreciated assets. I'd like to introduce you to a member of our team to help you think through your options. When would be a good time to meet? So this, we've raised the idea of taxes, being effective, appreciated assets, and I've got somebody who can help. Another one, someone starts talking about all the demand on their cash and they're not able to make that gift that they've made in the past, like the story about the going from 30,000 to 300,000. You could have, your major gift officer could say, it sounds as though there's a lot of demands on your cash right now. May I introduce you to an expert from our team to work with you on exploring other ways to make your meaningful gift. Stop putting pressure on them through their cash. Next one. I'd like to introduce you to an expert on the team to discuss ways that you can secure tax benefits, receive additional income, and make the gift you want to make. There's a lot of good benefits here. I'd like you to meet somebody who can help you understand them. And then lastly, let's continue discussing ways you can make a very generous gift you want by using an asset other than cash. I'd like to introduce you to our specialists to help find a way to give that is most advantageous for you. Again, we want to get in the room and have the conversation. So, what does better together mean? It means for the donor finding a much more tax-effective way of doing their giving that maximizes their ability to hold on to their cash and liquidity. And there's lots of different ways we can help the donor do better and ways they can give that they may not even be aware of right now. Lastly, next, it's better for the organization. The organization is going to get larger gifts out of this from the same donors that they've already had. So that's great for them, and again, great for the donor. Major gift officer, they're going to raise more money. What's more to say? They're going to have an opportunity to raise more money. The plan giving officer is going to be involved in the larger gifts and largest, hopefully, within the organization by bringing their expertise to the table as one of the experts that helps cultivate this donor to that ultimate gift they want to make to your organization. So you get to be involved in the really fun stuff and be in the room when great things happen. So I guess now, Jen, it's time for Q&A.
Yeah, absolutely. We had a couple of them come in, and I'm just going to head back in your presentation to the slides that they were asked on, and that might help jog your memory and my memory, both. We had one question come in on this slide. She's wondering, the very last thing on the PGO list, it says that they're okay with technicalities, but the MGOs avoid technicalities. And she's wondering if you could explain what you mean by that a little more.
Sure, absolutely. Sometimes when donors start sharing about their financial circumstances, and start to use language that major gift officers are uncomfortable with, they kind of deflect away from the conversation. It's just unfortunate, but I know too many circumstances where a donor starts talking about an event, sale of a business that's going to happen, and the fundraiser literally says, the major gift officer literally says, oh, I'll come back afterwards and talk to you about a gift. Now, your hair should be on fire when a donor says something about the sale of a big asset they have, because you want to find out, is there going to be some philanthropy that's going to be done through this? Learn much more about what's happening. But major gift officers typically don't like to raise questions they don't know the answers to. And gift planners, I think, first of all, we probably know more answers technically about finances and our donor circumstances, but also, even if you don't know the answer, you know how to go back and get the answer. So that's what I meant by that. It's not, it's having conversations, the comfort in talking about, the technical financial circumstances of a donor.
Gotcha. The next one came in, you were talking through this slide. I think you were telling a story of the gift planning officer asking the question of what made it possible for them to make the size of a gift they did. And we had a question come in. If you could just sort of repeat the questions that were asked during that conversation.
Ultimately, it boiled down to just one, one question that started with what, the fundraiser was picking up a $150,000 check. And he asked the donor, what makes it possible for you to make a cash gift of $150,000 to our organization? And what happened is the donor said, well, I'm having some significant financial transactions in my life, and here's what they are. And that's freeing up, that is allowing me to start to think differently of, I'm having to do a lot of planning. And the gift officer said, there are a lot of people in your circumstances who are going through events like this and find it useful to talk to somebody about the philanthropy that might be happening as part of this transition in your life. So it's featuring that there's expertise we can bring while this is all going on, and feature that we can help with that. When I'm working directly with donors and they're going through some of these financial events, this is what I usually say. That's great to hear that this transition's happening, and I'm excited for you. And I imagine you've got lawyers that are working with you to help you do this kind of planning, and of course CPAs and accountants that are working through the deal. There may be a business broker. We found that a lot. Donors like you have business brokers when they're going through a sale like this. Sometimes actually their financial planner or their investment advisor has got a role in that and moving in and out of the experience. And so that's all great that that's happening. I'm just wondering, who's talking to you about your philanthropy in this process?
Yeah.
Because often donors don't, I'm sorry?
Oh, no, go ahead.
So often donors often think about their philanthropy till after the fact, but their real opportunities occur before the fact. So, okay.
Okay. We have a lot of people asking about questions, so I'm going to ask kind of a specific one and then a more general one, and then I think our time's going to be up. So on this side, you were telling the story of the gift officer having dinner with the donor and asked a question that got ignored for a while and was very awkward. And we have a couple people wondering if you could repeat what that question was.
The question that person
that was ignored. Yeah.
Years, the relationship, and it's just I've been remiss in not asking you. How do you decide? What process do you go through to make your philanthropic gifts, and what role does something other than cash play in that? I mean, that's essentially what he asked. The reason I know this is he actually wrote a blog on his experience that talked about how hard it was to wait for the answers to those questions. But essentially, that's it. That I should have asked you this stuff a long time ago, and I didn't. And so please tell me about your practice of philanthropy and what role non-cash, assets may play in that.
Yeah, and then he drank a lot of water.
And then you drink a lot of water. Yeah, food works. I mean, we've all learned not to speak while chewing. So you could, if you're at a meal like he was, you could, that would work too.
Okay, so I'm just going to wrap it up with the main question we've received from quite a few people is they just really want your advice on, say, the top 2 questions that you would suggest that a major gift officer asks to start understanding a donor's financial context.
Well, sure, happy to do it, and we've actually been through them, and so I'll repeat them because they're part of the presentation.
Sure.
The first question is what makes it possible? What makes it possible for you to, make a $150,000 outright gift, or whatever that number the major gift officer's picking up the check for? What makes it possible? Now, $5,000. You're going to get a bunch of different things. But when donors are giving something that's a stretch for them, that's when you're going to get the critical information about about their financial circumstances. Another one that I didn't mention, but I'll mention here is behavioral finance talks about how people generally hate to lose twice as much as they like to win. And so we've had tested phrases over the years to raise our donors' response to a conversation about gifts of assets. One sentence we're using right now is, when I want to talk to a donor about a gift of appreciated assets, I say this: too many of our donors lose significant tax benefits when they make their gifts with cash. Mm-hmm. So what I've done is hopefully tweak the donor to go, what benefit am I losing? And then start to make the case of why they should give appreciated assets, not stock. Now, I'll just put this in at the very end. If somebody isn't sure how to explain that, or they don't necessarily, is there another way, or where can I see this played out? The 1959 movie, I believe it's called The Young Philadelphians, with Paul Newman, on 1 hour and 4 minutes into the movie, does a perfectly beautiful explanation of why you should make your charitable gifts with appreciated stock. So if Paul could get it right 60 years ago, I think we can share that story with other people and really help them be able to make that case when they're speaking with their donors.
Right. Well, perfect, Jay. We are over our time, so I do have to wrap things up now. I apologize. A lot of questions came in right at the very end, so we didn't get to those. But if you did have a question that you're just dying to know the answer to, you can reach out to Jay. You can reach out to Jeremy, myself, and we can try to get the answer for you. If you have questions about Stelter's products or services, you can always visit us at stelter.com. And then the other main question that I have coming in is, can I get the slides and can I access the recording, and where can I do that? And the answer is yes. I will be putting those up on our website today, actually. They should be there tomorrow for you, and they will be at stelter.com/webinars. So that's where you can go to find the recording and the handouts. So Jay, thanks again for spending the last hour with us, and everyone on the line, thank you as well. We hope you enjoyed the presentation today, and we look forward to speaking with you again in November. Have a great afternoon, everyone.
Thank you all.
Bye-bye.